The June sun was shining softly through the curtains when Lucy finally crossed the threshold of her house. After almost a month in hospital, each step reminded him of the long road to recovery that still awaited him. The cool air outside had caressed her pale face, giving her a brief feeling of freedom before she entered the stifling atmosphere of the family home. As soon as the front door closed behind her, Lucy felt the weight of the gaze of her mother-in-law, Madame Martine, weigh on her tired shoulders. The old woman's eyes, steel grey, scanned her from top to bottom, lingering on the dark circles that hollowed her face and on her still hesitant gait. "Here you are at last," said Madame Martine in a dry voice, without even a word of welcome. "I hope you're ready to get back to work. This house isn't going to clean itself." Lucy felt her heart tighten. She had hoped, perhaps naively, that her return would be greeted with a little more warmth, even compassion. After all, she had just gone through a difficult ordeal. But her mother-in-law's tone and the expression on her face left no room for illusion. "Madame Martine," Lucy began in a soft voice, "I am still convalescing. The doctor recommended rest and—" "Rest," interrupted his mother-in-law with a dry laugh. "Do you think the world stops spinning while you lounge in the hospital? Look at the state of this house." With a theatrical gesture, Madame Martine pointed to the living room. Certainly, the room was not in immaculate condition. A few magazines were lying on the coffee table, and a thin layer of dust covered the shelves. But in the eyes of Lucy, tired and still fragile, it seemed like an insurmountable mountain. "I understand that the house needs attention," Lucy tried to explain, "but I'm not yet in a state to— enough apologies," Madame Martine exclaimed, cutting short any attempt at dialogue. "I put up with your absence for weeks. I had to manage everything alone. And now that you're back, would you like to sneak away again?" Lucy felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had hoped that perhaps her hospitalization would have softened her mother-in-law's heart, that she would have understood the seriousness of her situation. But it seemed nothing had changed. "Please," Lucy whispered, "I need to rest. I promise to take care of the house as soon as I feel better." Madame Martine's face hardened even more. Without a word, she disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Lucy alone in the hall, her heart heavy and her legs trembling. For a brief moment, the young woman considered turning around, leaving this house that brought her nothing but stress and sadness. But where would she go? She had nowhere else to go. Slowly, Lucy walked towards the sofa and sank there, exhausted by this brief exchange. She closed her eyes, hoping to find a moment of peace. But the sound of footsteps approaching quickly made her jump. Madame Martine reappeared, holding in her hands a bucket filled with soapy water. Before Lucy could react, her mother-in-law lifted the bucket and dumped its contents on her. The cold, dirty water hit Lucy head-on, soaking her clothes and hair. The shock left her speechless, trembling and suffocating. "That should wake you up, little lazy girl," spat Madame Martine, a cruel smile on her lips. "Now you're going to clean up this mess and the whole house with it. And no hanging around." Her eyes burning with tears and soap, Lucy jumped up. Humiliation and anger boiled inside her, giving her a strength she didn't know she had. Without a word, she rushed to the front door. "Where do you think you're going like this?" shouted Madame Martine behind her. But Lucy did not turn around. She threw open the door and ran out, ignoring her mother-in-law's screams that echoed down the quiet street. She ran without stopping, her wet clothes sticking to her skin, her hair dripping down her back. Passers-by looked at her in surprise, some with concern, but she didn't care. All that mattered was getting as far away as possible from this house, from this woman who had treated her with such cruelty. Her steps led her instinctively towards the municipal park, a green haven in the heart of the city. Out of breath and trembling, Lucy collapsed on a bench away from the main paths. It was only then, out of sight, that she finally gave free rein to her tears. For long minutes, she cried in silence, releasing all the accumulated tension, fear, and sadness. The sun slowly dried her clothes, but the cold of the water and the humiliation lingered inside her. As she began to regain her composure, a soft voice startled her. "Lucy, is that you?" Looking up, Lucy recognized Claire, an old high school friend whom she had not seen in years. Claire's face expressed genuine concern. "My God, Lucy, what happened to you?" Seeing Claire's kind face, Lucy felt a wave of relief wash over her. Without thinking, she threw herself into her friend's arms and let out more sobs. Claire, surprised but understanding, hugged him gently. "Come, darling," she whispered. "We're going to go to my place. You need to change and warm up." Grateful, Lucy let herself be guided by Claire. During the short ride to her friend's apartment, she remained silent, unable to put into words what she had just experienced. Once inside Claire's warm little apartment, she lent him some dry clothes and prepared some hot tea. Sitting on the comfortable sofa, a steaming cup in her hands, Lucy finally began to relax. "Now," Claire said softly, sitting down next to her, "tell me what happened." And Lucy spoke. She recounted her hospitalization, the difficult return home, the cold reception from her mother-in-law, and finally, the humiliation of the bucket of water. As she spoke, she felt a weight lift from her chest. Claire listened attentively, her face changing from sympathy to indignation. When Lucy had finished her story, her friend took her hands in hers. "Lucy, you can't go back there," she declared firmly. "What your stepmother did was pure and simple abuse. You deserve better than that." Lucy nodded, tears in her eyes. "But where am I going to go? I have nowhere else." "You can stay here as long as you need," Claire replied without hesitation. "My sofa bed is very comfortable, and it will be good to have some company." Gratitude overwhelmed Lucy. For the first time in weeks, she felt safe, understood and supported. "Thank you, Claire," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need to thank me," smiles Claire. "That's what friends are for. Now, get some rest. Tomorrow we'll think about what we can do to help you get your life back together." That night, lying on Claire's sofa bed, Lucy made a silent promise. She would never let anyone treat her that way again. She was going to get up, stronger than ever, and show Madame Martine and the whole world what she was capable of. With this resolution in mind, Lucy fell into a peaceful sleep, lulled by the purring of Claire's cat and the distant noise of the city. Tomorrow would be the first day of his new life. The next morning, Lucy awoke to the soft sound of birdsong filtering through the half-open window of Claire's apartment. For a brief moment, she felt disoriented, not recognizing the environment around her. Then, the events of the day before came back to him, and a complex mix of emotions overwhelmed him: relief at being far from his mother-in-law, gratitude towards Claire, but also a touch of anxiety in the face of uncertainty of his situation. The smell of freshly brewed coffee pulled her from her thoughts. Claire appeared in the doorway, 2 steaming cups in her hand, a warm smile on her lips. "Slept well?" she asked, handing Lucy a cup. Lucy nodded, grateful. "Better than I've had in weeks. Thanks again for having me." Claire sat on the edge of the sofa bed. "It's normal. That's what friends are there for." She paused, taking a sip of coffee before continuing. "So what's your plan now?" The question, although predictable, took Lucy by surprise. She hadn't really had time to think about what happened next. All her life, she had followed the path traced by others, first her parents, then her husband and her mother-in-law. The idea of taking control of one's destiny was both exciting and terrifying. I don't really know," she finally admitted. "I guess I should look for a job, but with my health still fragile." Claire placed a comforting hand on his arm. "Don't worry about that for now. You need time to recover, physically and emotionally. Why don't you start by going to a lawyer? What your mother-in-law did is unacceptable." Lucy hesitated. The idea of filing a complaint against Madame Martine made her uncomfortable. Despite everything she had been through, a part of her still feared the consequences of such an action. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she whispered. "And then, what would my husband say? He's always on the move, he doesn't even know what happened." Claire frowned. "Lucy, you can't let fear paralyze you. You deserve better than that. If your husband can't support you in this situation, then maybe it's time to reconsider your relationship too." These words, although hard to hear, resonated in Lucy. She suddenly realized how much she had allowed herself to be stifled, how much she had lost sight of her own desires and ambitions. "You're right," she finally said, a new determination in her voice. "I can't continue like this. It's time I take back control of my life." Claire's smiles, visibly relieved to see her friend regain some of her combativeness. That's the spirit. So, what do you want to start with? Lucy thought for a moment. The idea of filing a complaint still scared her, but she knew she had to act. I think I should find a job first. Having my own income will give me more options and freedom. Great idea, Claire agreed. I know a temp agency that could help you. We could go there today if you feel ready. Lucy nodded, feeling a wave of hope rising within her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a purpose, a direction. After a quick breakfast, the two friends got ready and went to the temp agency. The journey was an opportunity for Lucy to rediscover her city, to see the lively streets, the people going about their business. She realized how isolated she had been lately, cooped up in her mother-in-law's house. At the agency, they were received by a friendly advisor named Emily. Lucy explained her situation, omitting the most painful details, but emphasizing her desire to work despite her still fragile health. Emily listened attentively, taking notes. I understand your situation, Lucy, she said with an encouraging smile. We have several offers that could suit you, part-time positions that would allow you to gradually readjust to the world of work. During the next hour, Emily presented different opportunities to Lucy: receptionist in a small hotel, assistant in a library, saleswoman in a clothing store. Each possibility made Lucy's heart beat a little faster. She already saw herself in these roles, regaining her independence, her self-confidence. There is also this administrative assistant position in a charity, added Emily. It's a 6-month contract, renewable. The work is not too physical and the atmosphere is known to be very caring. Lucy's eyes lit up. This opportunity seemed perfect. Not only would she be able to work at her own pace, but she would also feel like she was doing something useful, contributing to a cause greater than herself. I'm very interested in it, she says enthusiastically. How do I apply? Emily smiles, visibly delighted by Lucy's interest. I can organize an interview for you tomorrow if you want. The association is looking for someone quickly. Lucy glanced at Claire, who nodded encouragingly. Okay, she said, feeling her heart race with excitement and apprehension. I'm ready. Leaving the agency, Lucy felt transformed. For the first time in months, she felt like she had a purpose, a hope for the future. Claire hugged her, proud to see her friend regain confidence. You see, Claire said as they walked down the sunny street, things are already starting to look up. You are stronger than you think, Lucy. These words touched Lucy deeply. She realized that for too long she had let others define her worth, her strength. It was time to change that. Back at Claire's apartment, Lucy spent the rest of the day preparing for her interview. She updated her CV, with the invaluable help of her friend, and thought about what she could say about her past experiences and her skills. In the evening, while they shared a simple but delicious meal prepared by Claire, Lucy felt the need to express what had been bubbling inside her since the morning. You know, she began, playing absently with her fork, I think I figured something out today. Claire looked up from her plate, attentive. What then? For years, I let my mother-in-law treat me like I was insignificant, like I was worthless. And somehow, I came to believe it. Lucy took a deep breath before continuing. But today, when this advisor told me about these jobs, when I saw all these possibilities, I realized that I was worth much more than what Madame Martine wanted me to believe. Claire smiled, tears in the corners of her eyes. Of course you're worth more than that, Lucy. You're intelligent, kind, hardworking. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Lucy felt her throat tighten with emotion. Thank you, Claire. Without you, I don't know where I would be now. You would have found your way, I'm sure, Claire replied with conviction. You are stronger than you think. These words resonated in Lucy, echoing a resolution that had been growing within her since the morning. You're right, she said, her voice gaining confidence. And that's why I made a decision. Claire looked at her curiously, silently encouraging her to continue. I am not going to file a complaint against Madame Martine, declared Lucy. Seeing Claire's surprised look, she hastened to add, not because I'm afraid, but because I don't want to waste my energy on a legal battle. I want to move forward, build my new life. She paused, searching for words. My revenge, if you can call it that, will be to succeed. To become the strong and independent woman that Madame Martine has always tried to stifle. I want her to see what I am capable of, to realize what she lost by treating me like this." Claire nodded, understanding her friend's approach. "That's a very mature approach, Lucy. I'm proud of you." "It won't be easy," Lucy continued, more for herself than for Claire. "There will be moments of doubt, obstacles. But I make a promise to myself here and now, I will never again let someone make me feel inferior. I will build the life I deserve, step by step." Claire raised her glass. "To your new life, then. And to the extraordinary woman you are becoming." Lucy smiled, also raising her glass. "To my new life," she repeated, feeling a wave of determination wash over her. That night, lying on the sofa bed, Lucy thought about her promise. She knew the road would be long and sometimes difficult. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face the future. With Claire's help, and especially with the strength she rediscovered in herself, she was going to transform this ordeal into an opportunity. Tomorrow would be the first day of her new life, the first step towards the woman she had always wanted to be. And nothing, not even the bitter memory of Madame Martine, could stop him. The morning of the interview, Lucy woke up before the alarm went off. A mixture of excitement and apprehension made his heart beat a little faster than usual. She got up slowly, taking care not to wake Claire, who was still sleeping in the next room. In the small bathroom, Lucy observed her reflection in the mirror. The dark circles under his eyes had faded, and a glint of determination shone in his eyes. She ran a hand through her hair, deciding it was time to take care of herself. After a quick shower, she put on the outfit carefully chosen the day before with Claire, a sober but elegant navy blue pantsuit, borrowed from her friend. When Claire emerged from her room, she found Lucy reviewing her notes for the interview, a cup of coffee in hand. "Are you ready yet?" smiles Claire, visibly impressed. "You look in great shape." Lucy smiled back. "I feel ready. Nervous, but ready." After a light breakfast, the two friends set off towards the charity. The bus ride was an opportunity for Lucy to mentally review the key points she wanted to cover during the interview. Claire, sensing his anxiety, gently squeezed his hand. "You're going to do it," she whispered with conviction. "Just be yourself." Arriving in front of the association building, a modern building with large bay windows, Claire hugged Lucy in her arms. "I'm waiting for you here. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you." These words gave Lucy the courage she lacked. She took a deep breath and pushed open the front door. The interior was bright and welcoming. Colorful posters adorned the walls, presenting the association's various actions. A young woman with a warm smile welcomed him at the reception. "Hello, I'm Lucy Dubois. I have an appointment for an interview." "Of course, Ms. Dubois. Mr. Leroy is waiting for you. I will take you to his office." Lucy followed the receptionist through a bustling open space, where employees were busy in an atmosphere that seemed both professional and relaxed. Arriving in front of a wooden door, the young woman knocked gently. "Come in," called a male voice from the other side. Mr. Leroy, a man of around 50 with a pleasant face, stood up to welcome him. His office, far from being austere, was decorated with photos of smiling children and exotic landscapes. "Mrs. Dubois, nice to meet you. Please sit down." The interview began in a classic manner. Mr. Leroy asked him questions about his background, his skills, his motivations. Lucy, encouraged by the benevolent attitude of her interlocutor, felt more and more at ease. "Tell me, Ms. Dubois," asked Mr. Leroy after a moment, "what attracts you to associative work?" Lucy took a moment to think. "To be honest," she began, deciding to err on the side of sincerity, "I've been going through a difficult time recently. This experience has made me realize how important it is to have support, a network. I want to be able to offer this support to others, to contribute to something bigger than myself." Mr. Leroy nodded, visibly touched by her response. "It's a great motivation. We're looking for people who understand the importance of mutual support." The interview continued on a positive note. Lucy felt that she had succeeded in showing the best of herself, her determination and her sincere desire to contribute. "Well, Ms. Dubois, concludes Mr. Leroy, standing up. "I must say that I am impressed. Your profile matches perfectly what we are looking for. If you are still interested, the position is yours." Lucy remained speechless for a moment, not daring to believe what she had just heard. "Really? Yes, of course I'm interested." "Perfect," smiles Mr. Leroy. "Our HR manager will contact you during the day for administrative details. Welcome to the team, Ms. Dubois." Leaving the building, Lucy felt like she was floating. Claire, who was waiting for him anxiously, understood immediately when she saw his radiant face. "Did you get it?" she asked, excited. Lucy nodded, a broad smile on her lips. "I start next Monday." The two friends hugged, sharing this moment of pure joy. For Lucy, it was more than just a job. It was the start of a new life, proof that she was capable of standing up and succeeding on her own. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Lucy, with the help of Claire, began looking for a small apartment to rent. She wanted to have her own space, a place that would truly be hers. The weekend before her first day of work, they found an ad for a studio in a quiet neighborhood, halfway between the association and Claire's apartment. The owner, an elderly lady named Madame Rousseau, was immediately charmed by Lucy. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she said, showing him around the studio. "She had to fight to get by too. I would be delighted to have you as my tenant." The studio, although small, was bright and welcoming. Lucy immediately thought about it, already imagining how she was going to arrange it to make it her home. "I'll take it," she said to Madame Rousseau, feeling it was the right decision. On Monday morning, Lucy woke up in her new studio, surrounded by boxes that were still unpacked. She took a moment to savor this feeling of new beginnings. Every item she unpacked, every decorating decision she made, would be a step closer to her newfound independence. Upon arriving at the association, Lucy was warmly welcomed by her new colleagues. Marie, the administrative manager who was going to train her, took her under her wing. "Don't worry," she said with a wink, "we'll start slowly. The important thing is that you feel comfortable." The first days were intense but rewarding. Lucy discovered the association's different projects, learned to use specific software, and began to build links with her colleagues. Every evening she came home tired but happy, feeling that she had accomplished something significant. One evening, while she was tidying up her desk before leaving, Mr. Leroy came to see her. "So, Lucy, how is this first week going?" "Very good," she replied enthusiastically. "I feel really useful here." Mr. Leroy smiles, visibly satisfied. "I'm delighted. You know, when I interviewed you, I felt that you had this inner fire, this determination. I'm happy to see that I wasn't wrong." These words touched Lucy deeply. For the first time in a long time, she felt valued, recognized for her skills and not judged for her weaknesses. When the weekend came, Lucy invited Claire to come see her studio. Her friend brought a small plant as a housewarming gift. "So that your new home will be even more lively," she said, handing him the jar. Sitting on the small sofa that Lucy had bought secondhand, the two friends shared a glass of wine, silently celebrating this new chapter in Lucy's life. "You know," Claire said after a moment, "I'm so proud of you. In just 2 weeks, you have completely transformed your life." Lucy nodded, moved. "I never would have made it without you." "Don't say that," Claire replied, taking his hand. "You had this strength within you. You just needed a little spark to wake it up." Lucy remained silent for a moment, thinking about everything that had happened. She thought of Madame Martine, of the life she had left behind her. A part of her still felt anger, sadness at the treatment she had suffered. But another, stronger part was grateful. Without this ordeal, would she have found the strength to change her life? "You know what's strange," she finally said. "I no longer feel the need to take revenge on Madame Martine. I just want to continue moving forward, building my life." Claire smiles, understanding. "That's true victory, Lucy. You no longer let your past define you." These words resonated in Lucy. She realized she had kept her promise. She had become stronger, more independent. She had proven, to herself more than anyone, that she was capable of overcoming obstacles and creating the life she wanted. As they toasted again, Lucy felt filled with deep gratitude. Gratitude towards Claire, towards her new colleagues, towards the life which had given her this second chance. But above all, gratitude to herself, for having had the courage to seize this chance and transform her destiny. The path had been difficult, but each step had led her here, to this studio of hers, with work she loved and friends who supported her. It was a new beginning, certainly, but above all it was the beginning of a life that she had chosen, a life of which she could be proud. Tomorrow would be a new day, full of possibilities. And Lucy was ready to grab them, all of them. The weeks passed, turning into months, and Lucy's life took on a pleasant and fulfilling rhythm. His work at the association brought him new satisfaction every day. She felt useful, appreciated, and her skills continued to improve. Her colleagues had become friends, and the warm atmosphere of the office was a striking contrast to the oppressive atmosphere she had known at her mother-in-law's house. One morning in September, while Lucy was preparing her coffee in the association's small kitchen, Marie, her manager, came to find her with a big smile. "Lucy, I have excellent news," she announced. "The board of directors has decided to entrust you with the management of the project to help single-parent families. It's a great promotion." Lucy remained speechless for a moment, overwhelmed by emotion. This project was particularly close to her heart, and she had worked hard to come up with innovative ideas. "Thank you, Marie," she said finally, her eyes shining. "I don't know what to say. It's an incredible opportunity." Marie squeezed his shoulder affectionately. "You fully deserve it. Your commitment and creativity have impressed everyone here." This news gave wings to Lucy. She dove into her new role with enthusiasm, coordinating the different actions, meeting with beneficiaries, constantly looking for ways to improve the support offered to families in need. One evening, while returning home after a long day of work, Lucy encountered Madame Rousseau, her owner, in the lobby of the building. The old lady seemed preoccupied, a worried crease crossing her usually serene forehead. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Rousseau?" Lucy asked, worried. The owner hesitated for a moment before answering. "Oh, it's nothing serious, little one. It's just my husband's birthday today. The first since he passed away." Without thinking, Lucy took Madame Rousseau's hand in hers. "I'm sorry. Would you like me to keep you company for a while?" The old lady's face lit up. "That would be very nice, if you don't mind." They spent the evening together, Ms. Rousseau sharing memories of her husband, laughing and crying in turn. Lucy listened to him with patience and compassion, realizing how much she had changed. Just a few months ago, absorbed in her own problems, she might not have noticed her owner's distress. This evening marked the beginning of an unexpected friendship between Lucy and Madame Rousseau. They developed the habit of having tea together on Sunday afternoons, sharing their stories and thoughts on life. Meanwhile, life continued on. Lucy had not heard from her husband or her mother-in-law since her sudden departure. She had chosen not to contact them, preferring to focus on her new life and her emotional healing. However, fate had other plans. One Tuesday morning, while immersed in preparing for a fundraising event, Lucy received an unexpected call. The number displayed on her phone made her shiver. It was that of her mother-in-law's house. After a moment of hesitation, she picked up. "Hello, Lucia." Madame Martine's voice seemed different, almost unrecognizable. She seemed tired, vulnerable. It's Martine." Lucy felt her heart accelerating. Part of her wanted to hang up, cut short this conversation that threatened to bring painful memories back to the surface. But another, stronger part was curious. "Hello, Madame Martine," she replied in a neutral voice. "What can I do for you?" There was a long silence at the other end of the line, as if Madame Martine was looking for her words. I wanted to apologize," she said finally. "For everything." These words, Lucy had long hoped for them, imagined. But now that she heard them, she didn't know how to react. "I understand if you don't want to talk to me," continued Madame Martine in the face of Lucy's silence. "But I would like to see you, if you agree. I have a lot to tell you." Lucy took a deep inspiration. She thought of the whole path she had traveled, of the strength she had found in her. She was no longer the fragile and submissive woman she had been. "Okay," she said finally. "We can see each other. But not at home. In a neutral place. They agreed to meet in a small coffee in the city center the following Saturday. During the days that followed, Lucy was distracted, concerned about this upcoming meeting. She spoke about it to Claire and Mrs. Rousseau, looking for advice and comfort with her friends. "Are you sure you want to see her again?" Claire, worried. "You don't have to, you know." "I know," replied Lucy. "But I think I need it. To really turn the page." Saturday arrived, and Lucy went to the coffee with a mixture of apprehension and determination. She immediately spotted Madame Martine, sitting at a table near the window. His mother-in-law seemed to have aged 10 years. Her hair, formerly dyed with a deep black, revealed grey locks. Her shoulders were vaulted, as if she had an invisible weight. Lucy approached and sat in front of her. "Hello, Madame Martine." Her mother-in-law looked up, and Lucy was struck by the sadness she read there. "Lucy, thank you for coming." An embarrassed silence settled. Madame Martine seemed to look for her words, nervously turning her cup of coffee in her hands. "I don't know where to start," she said finally. "What I did to you. It's unforgivable. I was cruel, unfair. I realize it now." Lucy listened, her face impassive. Part of her wanted to scream, pour all the anger and the pain she had accumulated. But another, wiser part knew that revenge would not bring him anything good. "What has changed?" she just asked. Madame Martine sighed deeply. "Everything changed. After your departure, I realized how blind I was. The house was so empty, so cold without you. I started to see all the little things you did, that I was holding for acquired." She paused, wiping a tear flowing on her cheek. "And then there was this accident." Lucy frowned, surprised. "What accident?" "I came across the stairs," said Madame Martine. "I broke my hip. I had to stay in the hospital for weeks, then in rehabilitation. For the first time in my life, I had to depend entirely on the others. It made me think." Lucy felt her anger soften slightly. She could see sincerity in the eyes of her mother-in-law, the pain and regret authentic. "I'm sorry for your accident," she said gently. Madame Martine shook her head. "Don't be. It was a lesson in humility I needed. Lucy, I know I can't erase what I did. But I wanted you to know how much I regret. And I wanted to thank you." "Thank me?" Lucy repeated, surprise. "Yes. Despite everything I made you undergo, you kept your kindness. You could have tried to take revenge, but you chose to leave and build your life. You have become a strong and independent woman. I am proud of you, even if I have no right to be." These words touched Lucy more than she wanted to admit. For years, she had looked for the approval of this woman, hoped to hear even a nice word from her. "I can't say that I forgive you," said Lucy after a long time. "Not yet. But thank you for your apologies. They mean a lot for me." Madame Martine nodded, understanding. "I understand. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I changed, that I sincerely regret my actions." They continued to speak for more than an hour, approaching subjects that they had never dared to evoke before. Lucy spoke of her new work, her independent life. Madame Martine listened to her carefully, asking questions, showing a sincere interest that she had never demonstrated before. When they separated, Lucy felt strangely light. This meeting had not erased the past, but it had opened a door to a possible future, a future where hatred and resentment would no longer have their place. Going home, Lucy thinks about everything that had happened. She realized that the real change of heart was not only that of Madame Martine, but also hers. She had found the strength to face her past without being overwhelmed by bitterness. That evening, sitting in her little studio, Lucy felt in peace for the first time in a long time. She had traveled a long way, surmounted by the obstacles she thought insurmountable. And now she was ready to write the next chapter of her life, strong of her experiences and the wisdom she had acquired. The change of heart, she realized, was not a destination, but a continuous journey. And this trip, she was now ready to undertake her, step by step, day after day. The days following the meeting with Madame Martine were for Lucy a period of intense reflection. The apologies of her mother-in-law, although unsatisfied, had stirred emotions long buried. Lucy surprised himself to rethink at times from her past, to see them in a new light. One evening, when she came home from work, Lucy crossed Mrs. Rousseau in the hall of the building. The old lady immediately noticed the thoughtful air of her young tenant. "Something gets you out, my little one?" she asked gently. Lucy hesitated for a moment, then decided to confide. They went up in Mrs. Rousseau's apartment, and around a cup of tea, Lucy told her meeting with Madame Martine. "You know," says Ms. Rousseau after listening carefully, "forgiveness is a gift that you make to yourself as much as to the other. It is not a question of forgetting, but of release the weight of resentment." These words resonated in Lucy. She realized that despite all her progress, part of her remained trapped in the past, chained by anger and bitterness. But how to do it, she asked. How to forgive when the wounds are so deep? Mrs. Rousseau smiles wisely. "Forgiveness is a process, my dear. It takes time. Start by forgiving yourself for having endured this situation so long. Then try to see your mother-in-law as an imperfect human being, with his own injuries and its own struggles." Lucy meditated on these words during the days that followed. She immersed herself in her work, finding comfort in the projects she led to help families in difficulty. Each grateful smile, each sincere thank you reminded her why she loved so much what she did. One morning, when she was preparing a presentation for a new project, Lucy received a call from the hospital. Madame Martine had fallen and injured her hip again. Without thinking, Lucy took her day and went to the hospital. Upon entering the room, she was struck by the vulnerability of her mother-in-law. Madame Martine, usually so proud and right, seemed small and fragile in the hospital bed. "Lucy," whispered Madame Martine, surprise. "You came." Lucy approached the bed, hesitant. "How do you feel?" "I have known better days," replied Madame Martine with a weak smile. "But I'm touched that you were there. You didn't have to come." "I know," Lucy just said. "But I wanted to be there." They spent the afternoon together, speaking of everything and nothing. For the first time, Lucy had the impression of really knowing her mother-in-law. Madame Martine told her about her difficult childhood, her abandoned dreams, her regrets. "I spent my life trying to be perfect," said Madame Martine. "I imposed this pressure on all my entourage, including you. I now realize how unfair and cruel I was." Lucy felt her heart tighten. She began to understand that behind the hard and demanding facade of her mother-in-law hid an injured woman who had suffered herself. "We all have our demons to fight," said Lucy gently. "The important thing is to recognize our mistakes and try to improve." Madame Martine took Lucy's hand in hers. "You have become a remarkable woman, Lucy. I regret not having seen her earlier." These words, Lucy had long hoped for them. But instead of the satisfaction she had imagined, she felt a deep compassion for this woman who had been her executioner. The following days, Lucy shared her time between her work and the hospital. She helped Madame Martine in her rehabilitation, encouraging her with each little progress. Their relationship, formerly so tense, began to turn into something new, healthier. One evening, when she returned from the hospital, Lucy received a call from Claire. "Lucy, I'm worried about you," said her friend. "You spend a lot of time with your mother-in-law. Are you sure it's a good idea?" Lucy thinks for a moment before answering. "I understand your concern, Claire. But I think it's important for me. For the two of us, in fact. It's a way of healing, I suppose." Claire remained silent for a moment. "You have changed so much, Lucy. In a good way, I mean. You are stronger, safer from you. I'm proud of yourself, you know?" These words warmed Lucy's heart. "Thank you, Claire. I would never have arrived without you." A few weeks later, Madame Martine was allowed to go home. Without really thinking about it, Lucy proposed to help her settle. Upon entering the house she had fled a few months earlier, Lucy was surprised to see that the places no longer had the same power over her. What had been a prison was now just a house, with its good and bad memories. "It's strange to come back here," she said to Madame Martine when they settled in the living room. "I understand," replied his mother-in-law. "This house must be associated with many bad memories for you. I'm sorry for all of this, Lucy." Lucy looked around, noting the small changes, Photos of her that Madame Martine had added, fresh flowers on the coffee table. "You know," she said slowly, "I think I'm ready to create new memories here. Happy memories." Madame Martine's eyes got into tears. "I would like it very much, Lucy." The weeks that followed were an adjustment period for both. Lucy regularly came to see her mother-in-law, helping her in daily tasks, sharing meals, getting to know herself really for the first time. On Sunday, while they took tea in the garden, Madame Martine tackled a subject that they both avoided. "Do you have any news from François?" she asked, speaking of the husband of Lucy and her son. Lucy shook her head. "No, not since I left. I guess he is still on the move." Madame Martine sighed. "I spoke to him a few days ago. He doesn't understand what happened. I explained my share of responsibility to him, but I think he has trouble accepting the situation." Lucy remained silent for a moment, reflecting on what it meant for her. "I'm not sure I want to get back to contact him for the moment," she said finally. "I need time for myself, to understand what I really want in life." "I understand," said Madame Martine slowly. "You have the right to take the time you need. Know just that whatever you decide, I will support you." These words, coming from the woman who had once been her greatest obstacle, deeply moved Lucy. She realized how much their relationship had evolved, to what extent they had grown up. In the evening, when he got into her little studio, Lucy felt herself filled with a deep serenity. She had taken a long way, surmounted by the tests which she thought was insurmountable. And yet, here it was, stronger, wiser, capable of forgiving and going ahead. She thought of her work to the association, of the lives she helped to change. She thought of her friends, of Claire who had supported her in the darkest moments, to Mrs. Rousseau who had offered her wisdom and comfort. And now she even thought of Madame Martine, no longer as an enemy, but as an unexpected ally in her journey to healing. Lucy realized that reconciliation was not only with her mother-in-law, but also with herself. She had learned to accept, to enhance her strength and resilience. She had learned that forgiveness did not erase the past, but opened the door to a better future. Sitting at her window, looking at the city's lights, Lucy felt in peace. She did not know what the future reserved for her, but she knew she was ready to face her, whatever happens. Because she had found in her a force that she did not suspect, an ability to forgive and grow which still surprised her. Reconciliation, she realized, was not a destination, but a continuous journey. And this trip, she was now ready to continue him, step by step, day after day, with courage and hope. Time passed, transforming days in weeks, weeks in months. Lucy's life had taken a turning point that she would never have imagined a year ago. His work at the association flourished, bringing it new satisfactions and new challenges every day. One spring morning, while Lucy was preparing a presentation for an important project of the association, she received a call from Marie, her manager. "Lucy, do you have a minute? I have an important news to communicate." Lucy's heart accelerated. "Of course, Marie. What's going on?" "The board of directors has decided to create a new position as assistant director for the development of projects. And they want to offer it to you." Lucy stayed speechless for a while. "Me? But I haven't been there for a year." "And in a year, you did a remarkable job," said Marie enthusiastically. "Your project for single-parent families has been a real success. You have innovative ideas and you know how to implement them. This is exactly what we need to develop the association." This unexpected promotion fills Lucy with pride that she had never felt before. She realized how much she had grown, how much she had gained confidence and skills. The same evening, she celebrated the news with Claire and Mrs. Rousseau around a dinner in her little apartment. His two friends were radiant with pride. "I told you," smiles clearly while raising her glass. "You are extraordinary, Lucy. It was enough for you to have the opportunity to show it." Mrs. Rousseau nodded wisely. "Life sometimes has great surprises in store for us. You just have to have the courage to seize the opportunities when they arise." In the midst of these celebrations, Lucy felt the need to share the news with another person. The next day, she went to Madame Martine's. Their relationship, although fragile, had improved considerably over the months. When she announced her promotion to her mother-in-law, Lucy was surprised by the latter's reaction. Madame Martin got up from her chair and hugged her, tears in her eyes. "I'm so proud of you, Lucy," she whispered. "If you knew how I regret not having seen the extraordinary woman you are earlier." These words, coming from the woman who had made her suffer so much, touched Lucy deeply. She realized that the forgiveness she had granted to her mother-in-law was not only a gift for Madame Martin, but also for herself. It had allowed him to free herself from the weight of the resentment and to move towards a brighter future. The weeks that followed were intense for Lucy. His new position brought him new responsibilities, new challenges. She worked hard, often late at night, but every day brought her share of satisfaction. She saw the concrete impact of her work on people's lives, and that motivated her more than anything. One evening, while she was coming back from work late, Lucy found a letter in her mailbox. The writing on the envelope was familiar to her. It was that of François, her husband. With trembling hands, she opened the letter. François wrote to him that he was back in town. He expressed his regrets for his absence, for not having been there when she needed it. He asked if they could meet, talk about their future. Lucy stayed on her sofa for a long time, the letter in hand, lost in her thoughts. Part of her wanted to ignore this letter, continue her life without reopening old wounds. But another, stronger part knew that it had to face this situation to really move forward. The next day, she called François and they agreed to meet in a neutral cafe. When she saw it, Lucy was struck by how much he seemed to have changed. He looked older, more tired, but also more humble. "Lucy," he started after they had ordered their cafes, "I'm sorry. For everything. I should have been there for you. I should have seen what was going on with my mother." Lucy listened to her, express her regrets, her hopes of reconciliation. When he finished, she took a deep inspiration. "François," she said slowly, "I thank you for your apologies. They mean a lot for me. But many things have changed. I have changed." She then told him about her new life, her work, the strength she had found in herself. François listened to him carefully, a glimmer of respect and perhaps regret in the eyes. "I understand," he said finally. "You have built something beautiful, Lucy. I'm proud of you, even if I don't have the right to be." They left that day not as a husband and wife, but as an older. Lucy realized that she no longer needed the approval of François, nor anyone else. She had found her own value, her own strength. The months passed, bringing their share of challenges and successes. Lucy's project for single-parent families took advantage of the attention of local media. She was invited to give conferences, to share her experience and her vision. One day, when she presented her project during an important congress on social assistance, Lucy saw a familiar face in the hearing. It was Emily, the interim agency advisor who helped her find her first job. After the conference, Emily came to see her, a big smile. "Lucy, I'm so happy to see what you have become. Do you remember that day you came to the agency, looking for a new start?" Lucy nodded, moved. "How could I forget it? It was the beginning of everything. I always knew you had potential," says Emily. "But see you today, so confident, so passionate, it's beyond everything I could have imagined." These words touched Lucy deeply. She realized how long she had traveled, how much she had grown. In the evening, back home, Lucy sat down to her office and started writing. The words were easily flowing, telling his story, his struggles, his victories. She realized that she had something to share, something that could perhaps help other people going through difficult times. Over the weeks, his story took shape, becoming a book on resilience, forgiveness, and self-discovery. When she finished it, Lucy felt that she had taken a new stage in her healing journey. On the day of the launch of her book, Lucy was standing in front of a packed room. She saw Claire, Mrs. Rousseau, her colleagues from the association. She even saw Madame Martin, sitting discreetly at the back of the room. Each of these faces represented part of his trip, a learned lesson, an overcome obstacle. As she was starting to speak, sharing her story with the public, Lucy felt a wave of gratitude invade her. Gratitude for the tests that had made her stronger, for the people who had supported her, for the life that had given him a second chance. She realized that her future was really radiant, not because everything was perfect, but because she had learned to find the light even in the darkest moments. She had learned that real strength does not come from the absence of difficulties, but from the ability to overcome them and grow through them. By concluding her speech, Lucy looked at her audience and smiled. "Our past does not define us," she said. "These are our choices, our courage in the face of adversity, which shape our future. And this future, as radiant as it is only the beginning of a new chapter." While the applause resonated in the room, Lucy felt that she was exactly where she was to be. His trip was not finished, far from it. But she was ready for the future, whatever the challenges and joys that life would hold her. The future was bright, indeed. Not because he promised to be without difficulty, but because Lucy now knew that she had the strength to transform each obstacle into an opportunity, each test and lesson. And that was there, she realized, the most beautiful of the victories.